Hi. I thought while I was here today, I would read another story that came to me from a friend a long, long time ago. This was from my friend Midge, and it's another folk tale from West Africa, and it's another folk tale about Ananse. This one is called Ananse and the Lizard, a West African tale, retold and illustrated by Pat Cummings. Ananse and the Lizard. If you listen to stories during the day, a bush will grow on your face. In Ghana, where storytellers never want for an audience, this old saying is a warning to anyone lazy enough to sit around telling tales while there is work to be done. But nighttime is another thing. When the moon is full and the storyteller's every gesture can be clearly seen, the tale springs to life. Some of the favorite stories are about Ananse the spider, Ananse the clever, Ananse the greedy, Ananse the trickster. His troublemaking is legendary. But at times, even Ananse's best schemes backfire. So, if you lived in West Africa and you had finished all your chores for the day, if you loved to listen to stories, and if there happened to be a full moon, you might just hear about Ananse and the lizard and why lizards stretch their necks. At the spot where a dusty road meets a rocky one, Ananse the spider stopped to consider whether to head east or west when he saw a notice posted on a tree. Well, 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 what have we here? He said, shifting the little bundle that held everything he owned. Ananse scratched his chin. The chief's daughter. Someone will win her hand in marriage. Ananse chuckled to himself. If the chief had to hang up notices to find a husband for his daughter, she must surely be a scrawny little thing. Ananse read on. Whoever can guess her name, how hard could that be, shall marry my daughter and win half my land and rule as chief. Ananse read that line twice, and then he scampered off to the west without ever bothering to read another word. Now, had Ananse read on, he would have seen the warning written at the bottom. He might have, but he didn't. And that is where this story begins. Ananse found the chief's village easily enough. Musicians were beating a gong gong that could be heard for miles. Girls and young men crowded the streets, laughing and calling out to one another. Ananse dodged the countless feet, moving steadily in one direction. When he came to a high stone wall, he scurried up to get a better view. Ananse had just settled in a comfortable spot on a mango tree next to the wall when the gong gong suddenly stopped. The chief will be heard, shouted a palace guard. Ananse found himself looking down into the courtyard of the village chief. 3 elegant women sat eyeing the crowd suspiciously. A line of boys gently waved large fans over their heads. The time has come for my daughter to marry, the chief began. Her name has never been spoken outside the palace, but Whoever can guess her name will have proven himself worthy of marrying her and ruling half my kingdom." Excited whispers raced through the crowd as all eligible young men pushed their way to the front. "But," the chief continued, "anyone who dares to come forth with the wrong name will have his head chopped off and fed to the buzzards." The chief nodded to a guard holding a large, shiny blade, and then he marched back into his palace. The crowd thinned out rapidly. Ananse dropped his sack to the ground and scrambled down from the tree. "Do you mind?" said a lanky grasshopper. "Around here we don't just drop things without looking first." "One day," Ananse boasted, "you will tell your grandchildren that you were the first in your village to meet Chief Ananse. I might even invite you to the wedding." Ananse winked at the grasshopper. "Why, I might even find a place for you at the palace." "Really?" Grasshopper grinned shyly. "I think I would like to live at the palace." "Yes, well," Ananse reached for his sack. "I need a place to stay. Tomorrow will be a big day." Grasshopper hugged Ananse's bundle tightly. "Please, friend, come have dinner at my humble home. I insist that you spend the night and allow me to prepare a feast for you in the morning. Please?" Ananse smiled. He let Grasshopper carry his sack and lead the way. His stomach growled, but Ananse knew it was nothing that a meal couldn't fix. The dinner only left Ananse more hungry. "Some meal," he grumbled. "Crumbs, scraps, twigs." The minute Grasshopper dozed off, Ananse hurried back to the palace wall. A juicy mango would do what Grasshopper's dinner had not. Just as he reached for a nice ripe fruit, he heard voices and he looked down. "No one will come forward," one girl said. "Only someone brave enough to risk his life," another one teased. "Or wise enough to learn your name," said the third. "We'll see. Your father's test is clever, Ahoafe," added the fourth. Ananse could not believe his luck. It was the chief's daughter talking with her servants. At that moment, Ahoafe turned, and Ananse, stunned by her beauty, nearly fell from his perch. "Ahoafe." He softly repeated the name over and over as he scurried back to Grasshopper's house. "Ahoafe, Ahoafe." Grasshopper was asleep in a chair. Ananse slipped past his host and hopped into the big bed that Grasshopper had insisted that he take. "Chief Ananse," he whispered to himself. That had such a nice sound. Ananse fell fast asleep. Ananse awoke to voices in the next room. True to his word, Grasshopper had called his friends over to celebrate. Cricket and Mouse, Beetle and Snake, and a dapper fellow named Lizard were digging into a breakfast feast. When the last crumb was eaten, Ananse hopped up onto the table. I, Ananse, the most wise, the most clever, I alone know the name of the chief's daughter. He spun a tale of a night so dark and a wall so high, and his future bride was so beautiful. And soon I will be so rich, he added with glee. Now I must prepare to call on the chief. With a graceful leap from the table, Ananse strutted off to Grasshopper's bedroom. Amazing, said Beetle. Cricket rubbed his legs together in agitation. The guests began to leave, thanking Grasshopper even as they sighed over Ananse's good fortune. But Lizard stayed behind. Ananse emerged from the bedroom. He was splendidly dressed in Grasshopper's finest clothes. Ananse, my dear friend, Lizard began, trying his best not to hiss. You aren't planning to see the chief unannounced. Someone of your importance should have a servant, a messenger at least, to announce your arrival. You can't walk in like a common villager. Ananse imagined it would be quite impressive if a messenger were to announce him. Lizard smiled. But who to send? I need someone I can trust. Lizard's eyes gleamed. I hope you won't think me too bold, Ananse, but I would be so honored to do this for you. Your gratitude would be all that I would ask. Of all that Lizard had said, Ananse particularly liked the fact that he wouldn't have to pay him. All right, Ananse said. Go tell the chief that Ananse is coming to claim his daughter's hand. Lizard seemed overjoyed. He skittered for the door, and then he stopped. Oh, he said. You'd better tell me her name. Otherwise, I could lose my head. Ananse thought a moment, and then he whispered into Lizard's ear. Her name is Ahoafe, Ahoafe the Beautiful. Tell the chief it was I, Ananse the Clever. No, say wise. No, make that brave. Ananse the Brave. Ananse looked up, but Lizard was gone. Looking neither to the right or the left, his messenger was hurrying to the palace. Ananse and Grasshopper watched from the balcony as the palace guards listened to Lizard and then allowed him to pass. Ananse couldn't help but hum a little tune as he went inside to admire himself in the mirror yet again. Good morning, Chief, he sang to his reflection. Greetings, sir. It's a great honor, Chief. While he was practicing his bows, Ananse noticed Grasshopper watching him. Soon, my friend, chuckled Ananse, soon. But what Lizard had actually said to the guard was, take me to the chief, my good man. I plan to marry his daughter." "Go right in," the guard replied. But what he was thinking was what a fine pair of sandals that lizard would make. The chief was startled when he saw a lizard approaching him, but he hid his surprise well. After all, a chief must be fair. "You've come to claim my daughter's hand," he bellowed. Lizard nodded. "You know a wrong name will cost you your head." Lizard gulped and nodded again. He hoped Ananse knew what he was talking about. Turning to the executioner, the chief boomed, "Ready your sword!" "Now," he demanded of Lizard, "what is my daughter's name?" Lizard stuttered nervously. "Ahoa, ahoa, ahoa, ahoa." "What?" barked the chief. A bubbling pot of lizard stew came to his mind, tasty with cassava and a dash of coconut. "Ahoafe!" Lizard stammered. The wives gasped. The guards gulped. The executioner sighed. The chief sank back into his throne. Sadly, he had to admit that Lizard was right, and he sent for his daughter. "Ahoafe," said the chief, "here is your husband." Lizard bowed deeply. Ahoafe shuddered. "Here are your crown and your cloths," announced the chief, "and after you marry my daughter, half my kingdom shall be yours." There was a sudden flurry of activity. Tailors set to sewing, servants swept every corner, cooks rushed to the market in search of exotic foods. Oil lamps were lit in the courtyard for a feast that would last through the night. Ananse heard the gong gong announcing the marriage. Quickly he smoothed the folds of his robe and checked his reflection again, but the sound of Grasshopper's friends chattering drew him away from the mirror. "We hear Lizard is marrying the chief's daughter," Cricket was telling Grasshopper. "What nonsense!" Ananse snorted. "Lizard went to the palace as my messenger, and I, Ananse, will be marrying the chief's daughter." Ananse drew himself to his full height. "Follow me to the palace." Trailed by Grasshopper and his friends, Ananse headed for the palace. He was surprised that the crowd of festive villagers took no notice of him. Ananse was growing worried. "The chief will never find me in this crowd," he called out. Just then the gates to the palace opened. Ananse stared in disbelief. In the center of the procession, amid heaps of golden ornaments, sat Lizard with Ahoafe by his side. A crown rested on his scaly head. "He wouldn't dare!" Ananse gasped. "That snake!" "What's that?" Snake hissed. Ananse looked very appetizing now that he wasn't going to be chief. But Ananse was already off to Grasshopper's house, muttering and sputtering as he went. Snake could barely keep up, but Grasshopper leaped ahead of them all, taking care to stay out of Ananse's path. They all reached Grasshopper's house just in time to see Ananse bundling the last scrap of cloth into his sack. "Tell your friend Lizard he'd better watch out," Ananse fumed. "I swear by the great oath of the Ashanti that I will tear him limb from limb if I ever see him again. I should have known he couldn't be trusted. Those beady eyes, why I ought to—" "Could you leave me my robe, please?" Grasshopper asked, trying not to grin. Ananse flung the robe at Grasshopper. "Be sure to warn your friend," Ananse exploded. "Tell him I will find him." Scowling at everyone in the room, Ananse spun around and left. Any lizard worth his tail can tell the story of what happened in that little village on that wedding day to that lucky lizard. As long as Ananse doesn't see him first, that is. So if you look there, hiding in the corner, or there, scurrying along the wall, doesn't that lizard seem a little bit nervous? Well, now you know why a lizard stretches its head back and forth, this way and that. Because long ago, someone did warn Lizard. And that's the story of Ananse and the lizard. It's funny, in this story, Ananse doesn't win. Usually he tricks other animals and people and gets what he wants. But in this story, he was the one that got tricked. See you next time. Bye.